Well, hello, and welcome to another episode of Adulting in My Purpose. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Nick, your favorite personal growth coach, and I'm always excited to be with you. You know that. So if you are joining for the first time, I want to say welcome. If you are returning back, thanks for all the support. You know, I love to have you here and share what we're doing with Adulting in My Purpose. So be sure you like, you share, you subscribe, whatever you need to do on the platform that you are listening and tuning into. Let others know what we're doing with Adulting in a Purpose. So for my first time visitors that are watching out there, again, I always like to do an introduction. My name is Dr. Nicole Rankin, better known as Dr. Nick. I am a certified personal growth coach, and our vision here at Adulting in My Purpose is to help you as young leaders discover who you are, clarify your vision in life, and get you a solid plan to move forward to your next steps. How does that sound? Right? If you that sounds like you need something, you need to make sure you're tuning in, because this adulting thing is hard, it's stressful, but it's frustrating at times. You see them gas prices going up. I know, right? But you know what? You don't have to do it alone. We have a platform here that we are creating, that are building a community, a network where we are learning together, growing together, and helping young people just like you truly adult in their purpose. So if you're a young adult out there in your 20s and your 30s, be sure to join our Facebook group, lean in, stay informed of the events and activities that we have going on throughout the year. But enough of that. Let's go into starting this session of Adulting in My Purpose. You know, we like to bring on some amazing millennials that are out there making moves, doing their thing, and truly making an impact. And tonight, again, I can't deny it. Just these amazing guests. So I am excited to bring to the platform Gresham, better known as Gresh, Harkless Jr. And Gress is the founder of CB Nation and Blue 16 Media. And that's a business-to-business brand focusing on increasing the business success rate by improving visibility and resources for CEOs, entrepreneurs, and business owners. So the CB Nation consists of blogs, podcasts, and videos. And the Blue 16 Media helps change lives through media and technology, including digital marketing agency providing digital marketing services like web design, SEO to small, medium-sized businesses and organizations. And really, the marketing philosophy that he has is you are a media company developing a marketing strategy to connect with your target and reach your goals. He is a proud graduate of Harvard University, all my HUs out there, I know you're watching, and Georgetown University. And he's also a graduate of the 2020 Leadership Center for Excellence Young Professionals program, recognized by the Adrian, Virginia Chamber of Commerce 40 under 40. So I'm excited to welcome to the platform, better known as Gresh. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Great to see you, Dr. Nick.
Great to see you. Thanks for coming on. Good to have you.
I'm excited to be here.
Well, let's get in. I read your bio. You're doing some amazing things, and a part of your subscription, so I get your blogs, and so I just want to share some of the amazing things that you are doing with our audience. So, kind of just tell us the beginning about how you got started on this career path and where you are now.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I love everything that you're doing. And I love how you said, you don't have to go at it alone. Because a lot of times when I think about the journey, think about all the things that went, the way I wanted them to go, most of the things that didn't go the way I wanted them to go. It was a lot of people in my life in a lot of different ways that kind of helped me to kind of get to, where I want to be, where I am now, where hopefully I'm going to end up being.
Yeah.
But I graduated from Howard, like you mentioned, in Washington, D.C. area. I'm in Alexandria, Virginia now. And even before that, when I was going to college, I wasn't even sure what I wanted to do. So I came in as an undecided major. Wasn't really prepared, I guess, for college in the sense that I wanted to stay at home. I'm not that far from where I was, but I just wanted to stay at home. And at that time, I worked at what used to be known as Circuit City. So that was going to be my career plan. Is I made $8.75 an hour, which was what I thought everything I needed to make, and I was going to retire and do all those things. But mom and dad knocked some sense into me, and they said, "You're going to college." So I didn't want to go far, so I went down the street to Howard University and spent my 4 years there. After that, went to Georgetown University. I got a master's in sports industry management. And my bachelor's was in English and actually administration of justice. So I graduated in 2009. It was a crazy, hectic time. Didn't really know what was happening with the world, as a lot of people, and I graduated in 2009, my undergrad, graduated again in 2010 with my master's, and I was kind of like unleashed into the adulting world, I guess you could say. And it was chaotic, to be honest. Like I started out with a job that I wasn't really crazy about, so I ended up leaving that job. And then after that, it just seems like I was jumping from wobbly chair to wobbly chair to broken chair to broken chair. So amidst probably about 2 or 3 years, I was laid off from a job. I was going to get laid off from another job that I had. I had what I looked at that time were like mentors. When I would get a new job, I wanted to learn, how to be successful. I think I had 3 to 4 managers that left during the jobs that I had. I was promised jobs that didn't follow through. It was just chaos. So, needless to say, I was in a very like frustrated, space and, unsure. I feel like I did quote unquote all the right things. But it just didn't go the way I wanted it to go. But, a lot of times when things are kind of crazy and you sometimes don't realize that maybe they're going for your favor, that was exactly what happened to me. So amongst the craziness, I tore my Achilles tendon playing basketball. And when that happened, I was doing a lot of freelance writing. So I would interview entrepreneurs, business owners. I ask why they started their business, advice they would have for people that are getting started. And lo and behold, when I tore my Achilles, I wasn't able to kind of get around and do that like I had before. So like you mentioned, one of the sites I have is called CB Nation. Under that is CEO Blog Nation. And I started that largely because I tore my Achilles tendon. Had I not torn my Achilles tendon, I probably would not have been doing that. I probably still would be freelance writing to this day. But that happened. A lot of other things happened, throughout my, life. And it's kind of like by, looking in retrospect, it's those things that I didn't want to happen actually led me to where I ultimately am now. So that's kind of long-winded, but hopefully that tells a little bit more story.
No, this is an amazing journey because I know so many young people kind of are where you were. Then, you mentioned that you didn't necessarily want to go to college, didn't know what to do, but then you just kind of got on a path to figure it out. So let's unpack that a little bit more, just to kind of give somebody just kind of some insight. Like, how do you, get to the point where you're like, okay, I need to do something. Like, what do I do? And you kind of took a path and figure it out. How do you get to that point?
Yeah, it's so funny because one of the things I didn't mention. So when I was really young, I was 10 years old. My dad was in the military, so he had to go to an entirely different country for like a year. A very frustrating time because that was my partner, who I used to go play basketball, do all this stuff with outside. And he left like right after we moved because he had to, serve the country. So when that happened, I actually started at that time what became a family newspaper. So I would get on Microsoft Word. I would talk about all the things that were going on in our family, put some clip art there. And I basically would put out this newspaper every month. And I would also sell the subscriptions to like family members because I wasn't old enough to get a job. So the reason that I bring that up is because it was one of those things that, and mind you, I did it for like 2 years. So my mom kept all the papers. So I would go back and kind of look at them. And for me, it's kind of like looking at that. It's like, where did that come from? Like, where did that idea and all of that come from? So when I was in that craziness and I was unsure of like what I should do, when I was an undecided major, I was asking myself, like, what should I major in? What do I want to be? Just all those things. I went back to a lot of those things I did as a kid. Mainly that story was something that really stuck out to me to say, hey, you really like writing. So, I'm not sure what you want to do or how you want to do it, but that's going to be probably a core part of what it is that you do. So that's what led me to kind of come to a lot of decisions that I made, whether it was being an English major or potentially even starting the blog and interviewing people. All of it went back to me saying, okay, what did I do that I love doing? That I'm not sure if it can even be a job or a profession, but I know I love doing it. and maybe I'll just figure it out along the way. So that was my steps and the journey that I took. But a lot of it was because I didn't care at that time when I was a kid about making a lot of money, at least, and, you know, wanting a lot of accolades and prestige. It was just me being a kid.
Wow. That's amazing, because I always talk about, when I talk to my clients and people ask me, well, how do I find my purpose? I don't know what I want to do. You know, the first journey that I help them on is to kind of look back. Like, really, the things that you are gifted in, those natural and innate abilities and talents, you've been doing it all your life. You've been doing it, and it's just a matter of uncovering it. So I love the fact, and you was a little hustler,
just a little bit. Yes.
So you had the entrepreneur spit it all in you already.
Yeah, I always joke and said I was an entrepreneur before I even knew what that was. So like I had those tendencies. I would selling potato chips on the playground and things like that. But I would get my mom. My mom still gets on me about that because she said I was buying all these things for you to eat, and I was, you know, profiting a little, you know, here and there from that. So go figure.
Dang, I love it. So what would you say, you know, as you were establishing yourself kind of in this world, you know, what would you say will be some of your biggest challenges as you try to establish yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and especially, you know, you're doing this for a lot of millennials,
Mm-hmm.
is really that age factor. I think that was the biggest thing. I started my business, again, so I was amongst the other challenges that I talked about of like tearing my Achilles and
Mm-hmm.
getting laid off, and gonna get laid off again. I think the biggest thing that I came across outside of that was my age, especially when I started my business. So
Mm-hmm.
I was, you know, blessed enough to be staying at home during, you know, a lot of this chaotic period. So I didn't have as much of the overhead and things that I had to worry about that a lot of people do. So because of that, I tried to use it as much as possible, you know, to my advantage. And I gave myself pretty much one other time. I tried, you know, some other ventures and things like that that didn't go according to plan, didn't, you know, go how I wanted it to go. But one of the things that I said is that I'm going to give myself one more opportunity. And at that time, I was 25, turning 26 or so.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, let me just see, you know, what I can get out of this and see what happens from there. So I started to do a lot of freelancing. I started what eventually became my digital marketing company.
Mm-hmm.
But to answer your question, the thing that I think was the hardest from that standpoint was having that energy, that you know, that all those things that kind of, you know, made you excited and attracted people to you. At the same
Mm-hmm.
time, that youth was kind of used at my disadvantage. Oh, you don't really know what you're talking about. How many times have you worked with certain clients and things like that? So it was just kind of on me to kind of, you know, try to use that exuberance, that energy to just try to you know, attract people, but at the same time, maybe approach it more from a long-term approach. So I
Mm-hmm.
think a lot of millennials that, especially if they're trying to break into, you know, certain things where they're not quote unquote supposed to be, they're trying to get positions that, you know, need, I remember this applying for jobs that need 5 to 7 years of
Yeah.
experience, but you're only out of school for the last 2 years. So like, you know, fit under those parameters? So it's just a matter of just, you know, trying to be more creative and think outside the box.
And I love that. And, you know, it's such a struggle when we talk about the generation gaps. You know, for whatever reason, millennials get a bad rap. You know,
Yes.
they get a bad rap, and it's just a lot of negative connotation with a whole entire generation. So as you have been, you know, trying to establish yourself and kind of firming yourself within your industry and what you do, what some of the things that you should suggest to leaders, I would say the older or seasoned generations, about engaging with millennials? What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing, and I feel like this makes sense in all kind of communications, definitely all generations, is kind of meeting people where they are.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that you hear from people that are not millennials, the more seasoned and generations, is that they don't know how to communicate, or, you know, you would hear they're always on their phone. That, you know, it's
Mhm.
not that we don't do some of the things that other generations do. It's just that it's done differently. So when I say meet people where they are, and I'm in a marketing space as well too. So a lot of what I said is really understand who you're trying to target and really like paint that picture of who they are and meet
Mhm.
them where they are. And I think even too, you don't want to kind of not be true to who you are, true to, you know, those things about yourself. So it's just saying, hey, you know, I've never used this before, whether we're talking about social media channel, if you're doing something on TikTok, for example, or something like that, you say that, hey, I don't usually, you know, use something like this, but I'm going to try this. I think that humanity, the trying of things is definitely something that could attract you to people. So I think overall, just, you know, for one, just making sure that you're meeting people where they are, you understand the nuances of like how that communication could be different, but you're also not trying to pretend to be something that you're not, which, you know, that authenticity part is huge amongst people. One other, you know, additional thing that I would try to add in is that I read in one of my internships, my boss actually gave me a book called Drive by Daniel Pink. And I read that years and years ago. And it was so powerful because it talked about how, which is especially evident in our generation, it's not just about the bottom line. And you hear a lot of stuff about the great resignation and why people are leaving jobs. So I think in meeting people where they are, it's also understanding that money is just not the end all be all. So if you just think that you're going to like give somebody a raise, or you just, you know, pay somebody a little bit more and that's everything, that's not meeting them where they are. So I think really, really understanding each of those aspects and the totality of what somebody considers value is going to be huge.
I love that. I love you saying it's really about making the connections now.
Yes,
all about making a connection. So, you know, you doing so many things. You got your podcast, you got your blog, you got your videos, and all the things that you're doing for CEOs and entrepreneurs. Like, what is the catalyst that keeps you inspired to just keep going?
You know, honestly, Dr. Nick, like having and getting an opportunity to be on this show is actually like one of the things that keeps me going. And I just saw that as an example, is just because I think sometimes throughout the journey, and I think, you know, just about anybody who can relate to that, who's going through any type of, you know, ups and downs in their life, you sometimes like, why am I doing all this? Like, am I just spinning my wheels? Is it really worth it? But every now and then you hear something that maybe you did and you didn't even realize that you were helping somebody. So I remember I had somebody on, I want to say maybe the 20th show or something that I did. It was very early on in the podcast that I did. And she said, and I just reached out to her because she had contributed to the blog in the past. And she reached out to me and she said, hey, yeah, I'll definitely be on your podcast. And like during the interview, didn't prep or anything like that, she said, you know what? I want to actually thank you because you put out a post asking, what does being a CEO mean to me? And at that time, that post kind of spurred her to realize that she wasn't doing what she wanted to do in her job. She left her job and is literally crushing it in the Tampa Bay area. She has a business called No More Nausea, and she's doing some phenomenal things. And I think had I not, you know, continued to do what I did, I would have never realized that. And I don't necessarily think that that's me, like, you know, flexing or saying I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I just literally think that we're giving gifts and opportunities to do what we're supposed to do with it. And we're more of a conduit than anything else. So I think when you hear those things, it just kind of puts things in, you know, through those dark times, those times that aren't ideal, you're kind of reminded that, hey, it's not necessarily always about me. And that, you know, if I continue to do what I'm supposed to do, what my purpose is, truly my purpose, then I'll at the end of the day, hopefully be in the right place doing the right thing.
I love that. I love that. And it what it does is what you said, you hit, I mean, you're giving gold, and it's just a realization of what life is and how to be significant. When you said to be a conduit, like it's not about us. Can you just speak a little bit of how do you really just kind of get out your own way? How did, you know, as an adult, you're like, I got to make this money. I got to do this. I got to do that. Like, how do you make that shift in mindset to get it, say it's not about me?
That's a phenomenal question. And I think one of the biggest things that I did that a lot of people don't do, and I would hear things along my journey that, like, for example, I heard, college is the best 4 or 5 years of your life. And to me, that was one of the more depressing things that I ever heard, because that basically meant that if you're, graduating around 21, 22 tops, then and you're living to your 80 or 90 years old, like what are you really kind of doing, in your life, and how are you kind of looking at that? So for me, I did a lot of inner work. And that's just kind of like not doing things that are for this theme, are for the accolades, not doing things that I'm told that I should do. I really got kind of clear. I found out that, hey, I wrote a family newspaper, and that's something that everybody doesn't do. So it came from like creating that space to kind of understand that this is who I am. And taking it a step further, once you kind of understand a little bit more about who you are, you get a little bit more comfortable in your skin. The idea is that I think there's even a quote that says, be yourself because everybody else is already taken. But I think in order to really be yourself and to really adult in your own purpose, as you say, it's so important to find out what the my is, what the I is, what the me is, because that's going to give you that opportunity to be kind of more comfortable in your journey, more comfortable in what you're doing, not, busy looking at, other people and, saying I should be here. And don't get me wrong, it's not something that happens over, it's not a one-day process. It's something you have to do over and over again and continue to kind of work out those muscles and say, hey, I'm gonna do what I believe are my gifts and my opportunities, and I'm gonna stay true to that. I'm a very God first person, so I pray on it. A lot of decisions I made that were frustrating and scary, I prayed on, and I just try to do what I felt God was kind of putting on me to do.
I love that. And you're right. That's something that we don't do normally, right? It's we always say that growth has to be intentional. Like you have to make a conscious effort to say that I'm going to grow myself. I'm going to truly get to know who I am and what it is that I want to do and why I want to do it. So I love the fact that you talked about that. So what would you say would be like one of the major challenges that you have had to overcome so far? And then what lessons have you learned from it?
Yeah, I think probably going back to just getting laid off. Kind of unpacking that a little bit. I know I touched on it a little bit, but I basically had a job, which was my absolute favorite job. Is I mentioned I had my master's in sports management, so it's really hard to break into the sports industry. But I ended up getting what was my favorite job because I'm very active, try to move around all the time. I got to go to preschools in the Northern Virginia area and teach sports camps to little 4 to 5, or really 2 to 5 year olds. So absolute favorite job that I ever had. Just because, just go in there, you're pretty much like Disneyland dad, so to speak. You come in with a big inflatable. And I think what happened at that time is I felt like that position wasn't stable. So I got a little, paying attention to the signs. I said, okay, this doesn't necessarily feel stable. So I left that job. I took another job. And like I mentioned, my boss, my manager, and the deputy manager within 3 weeks left that position. So I said, this isn't stable either. So I said, you know what? At the end of the day, I know I love that job. I don't know if it's stable or not sure what's going to happen, but I know I love working with the kids. So let me go back and do that. So I talked with the manager at the time, and he basically said that, hey, yeah, we miss you, but you can come back, hit the ground running, yada, yada, yada. 3 weeks later, I was laid off. So I was really frustrated. I was in like kind of a dark place because I felt like I was, tricked. I felt like, I felt a lot of different things at that time. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges that I had. But now in retrospect, I could say that I started, my digital marketing company, all those things as a result of that. So I think understanding that even in those dark times, it's always darkest before dawn. I always tell myself that is the biggest lesson I can kind of take away. But I would say too, just kind of trust that intuition, trust that if you feel like something isn't right, that it's probably not right. I think that's something that over the years, I've trusted myself more in like feeling like even when I was going to get laid off, I knew and I felt that was going to happen at that time. I didn't know before, but I literally was staying at home with my family. I said, I think my boss is going to lay me off. And because I got a call to say that we're going to meet. And it's just trusting those things, because a lot of times it's not based off of, anything. It's not woo woo all the time. A lot of times it's just like you see those experiences, you see those patterns, and sometimes you can kind of decipher what's happening. So those will probably be the two biggest lessons I got from that.
Wow, good stuff. Good stuff. So, you just talked about a lot of your journey. It's not a straight road. Life is just kind of curves, bumps, ups and downs, turnarounds, But how do you kind of just stay focused and stay motivated to be engaged to keep going and pressing on?
Yeah, I think it really goes back to my faith. And what I did, even when I thought about the entrepreneurial journey, like I heard, from people I love and care about to this day, that was not the right route. No one really told me that was the right route. No one really told me at age 25, 26, or, even before that, to do freelance writing and all those things. So I really stayed true to my faith. And really, I felt like, when you start to really create that space and learn more about yourself, learn more about your particular journey, your gifts, your talents, things you're interested in, I think you start to see like you're made uniquely for a very specific purpose, for a unique purpose. And once you start to create that space and understand that, and again, I have conversation and I, pray about it and really just ask for, basically my steps to be, riding in the correct direction so that I go to where I'm supposed to be. Yeah. That's helped me out a lot. But I will say this, once you figure out like where that space is, try to have as much of your environment around that. So for me, when I found out being an entrepreneur, business owner, CEO was something that I wanted to kind of work on, I was in a networking group. I was doing podcasts. I was doing interviews. I engulfed myself in like, how do I figure this out? So I didn't really know anything else. Like success to me was like just making a sale at one point. Yeah. And then you get around another person, it becomes six figures. And this, there's just different levels. So it all depends on your environment.
I love that. And I want you to kind of talk about that because a lot of times, when I talk to young people, they're afraid to kind of take the risk and take that step to get out their comfort zone, to experience things like you did. So how do you kind of get yourself up to do that, to get out your comfort zone?
Yeah, it's so funny because I had somebody on my show and he said a phrase that I quote in Adam Carswell. He said that dig your ditches before you need them. And the reason I bring that up is because it's a lot around fear. So I think one of the things that I did without even knowing, I just knew that probably when I was around high school, when I was, graduating, I let fear kind of control my life more than I wanted it to. So I made it a point, even through college, to do certain things that would basically start to dig those ditches, to kind of understand that fear is something that doesn't necessarily go away, but it is something you can kind of cope with. You can realize that sometimes it's not as big as it seems. So whether it was public speaking, doing things like that, taking a public speaking class. At that time, I joined a co-ed fraternity. So I did certain things that were out of my comfort zone at that time. So when it came time to, start a business, it was still difficult, no question, but I had flexed some of those muscles before. I worked that out a little bit more. So for anybody that's thinking about doing that, you're thinking about potentially maybe leaving your job or starting a business or whatever that is, think about something that may be a little bit smaller that you can do that would flex out those muscles a little bit more. If there's somebody you look up to, send them an email. If you're a little bit bolder, give them a phone call. If there's somebody that you really want to take out on a date, whatever it might be, talk to them directly. Just do those things. Yeah. And I'm telling you, that fear muscle will work in that situation, but it will also work in other situations.
I love that. Shoot your shot.
Shoot your shot. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's great that you talk about that because, we always say that greatness happens outside of the comfort zone. So you got to be able to take those risks and put yourself out there because you never know what's going to happen. So let me ask you this. You're going through life. What role does like a mentor or coach play in your life and your journey as well?
Yes, it's been huge. Like I haven't had a lot of formal mentors, but I've definitely, invested obviously a lot more into coaching and things like that. But what I also want to let people know, especially now, and I mentioned this a little with my podcast and the blog, coaching, mentoring can happen in a lot of different ways. To me, like I think a lot of it is if you see somebody that's really great at what they do, asking them how they do it. And that might be you actually asking them. It might be you listening to a podcast of somebody that's doing something. It might be you reading somebody's biography or a book and getting all that lessons. There's so many different ways now to get that. So I think it's been huge. And like I mentioned, that environment was huge because what it did was it took me out of, can I do this, to more like, how do I do that? And once you get in that space, you become a lot more action oriented. It became a lot more of like, not can I run a business? Like, okay, like I'm in this networking group that meets once a week. I'm around nothing but business owners. So how do I now, do X, Y, and Z? So I think once you get in that environment, whether we're talking about podcasts, books, being physically around people, or even virtually, as we're doing a lot more today, I think all of that helps out tremendously.
I love that. I love that. So, when you think about kind of your journey, looking back from where you started to where you are, what advice would you give, other millennials who are out there just at the point in their life where they're seeking, right? They're seeking their purpose, just trying to figure out what do I want to do in this world? What advice would you give them?
I will say this. We probably don't have enough time to talk about all the things that I've done.
Yeah.
And I've been everything from an adjunct professor to, like I mentioned, teaching kids to, starting an editing, writing business. I've done so many different things. And what I would tell people, anybody really, if you're at this kind of fork in the road where you're not sure what to do, try a lot of different things and do it, very, inexpensively. And when I say inexpensively, I don't mean just money wise. I also mean like time wise. If there's a way you can kind of just experiment and enjoy that process, that's one of the best ways to find out what you love and what you don't love to do. I've done so many different things. I was tutoring at one point. So all these different things that I did led me to realize like what I do love to do, but probably more importantly, what I don't love to do. And that's been the best kind of driver for me. And I think it's so important to do that, not just a one time. It needs to be something that's done on a regular basis, because I think we also evolve and change. So it's so important, especially as millennials and getting families, buying houses, do all these things that we go throughout our journey. Your desires, your interests, your goals, all that might change. So it's so important to kind of continue to do that on a regular basis.
I love that. I love that. What inspires you? You're so you seem so focused. Like what keeps you inspired?
I think the biggest thing is just trying to. I think I've come to a realization, like I'm very, very competitive, but I come to the realization that where I want to be, I'll never, ever reach. And I think what has helped me a lot, and this has been something that I've just kind of grown more into, is that we get so obsessed with getting the house, having the business, having the first sale, reaching six, whatever that destination is. There's almost this, it's kind of a letdown sometimes when you reach that. Yeah. So sometimes it's just the journey that you go in that you start to become a little bit more present in. You start to really, appreciate that a little bit more. So I think part of me and part of like, a lot of my social media handles is progression, which is there's a Gresham in the middle. It's not spelled the normal way. A lot of that is just because I wanted to be very rooted in the process of getting better on a regular basis. And I think it's really exciting for me now. We don't always give ourselves enough credit, is when we look back and say like, hey, I was here. And now I'm here. There's times you prayed for the things that you have now, and really starting to understand the journey. And once you start to unlock that, I feel like you're in a really great space, because you can't get too fast or farther ahead, or you can't get too lost in the past. You get really present in the current spot. So I think that's just my motivation, is like, what can I do to get better? Where do I need to get better? What can I do to get better? And what steps do I need to take to make that happen?
I love that, because that what you're talking about is all about personal growth and personal development. And as a personal growth coach, that just gets me on fire. Just hear that. So I love. So even when we talk about just the personal growth and development, we know that there are strategic things that you can do on a daily basis to kind of grow yourself. What are some of the things that you do? It's just kind of a routine, discipline practice for you in your life.
Yeah, I've really tried to drill a lot more actually within the last couple months into my morning routine. So like on my podcast, one of the things I ask for is a CEO hack, which is usually like an app, a book, or a habit that people have that makes them more effective and efficient.
Mhm.
And the CEO hack I heard over and over and over and over again is morning routines. And I
Mhm.
think the reason that that was so important is because it sets up your day. And actually, earlier this week, I had a crazy like morning where I didn't get to do my morning routine in the day that I wanted it to be done. And lo and behold, I had a crazy day.
Mhm.
So I think that's probably been the biggest thing is like creating those habits. So for me, it's just waking up and then I do some type of movement or some activity. I try to read the Bible. I meditate. I do all those things, and I think it gets me in the space of where I can continue to kind of do certain things, throughout the day, whether it be listening to a podcast while I'm walking my dog, or just, reading a certain chapter of a book, or just doing all those things. But I have that kind of insatiable appetite to kind of get better. And
Yeah.
again, like knowing that I'll never ever reach the excellence and the mastery and the perfection that I want to reach. That's helped out a lot. And I will say this too, I'm a big sports guy. So I always pay attention to athletes. And I think there's a lot of parallels between sports and business and life in general. And those
Mhm.
people that are really great at their craft, they continually kind of, beat at their craft and get better and always are critiquing themselves and kind of have that insatiable hunger to kind of get better. So that's also been a great, if I see somebody doing something, I know that when they make that game winning shot, like Michael Jordan, I think he even said, you don't see all the times that he missed it. You don't see all the practice
Right.
hours, all the times. That's just something we don't always see.
Yeah, absolutely. You talked about I love the way you just kind of talk about the process. And one of my favorite sayings, I always say, embrace the process. Just embrace the process because there's so much to learn, so much of you to grow. It's like the realization is you have to grow to be the person to manifest the dreams and all the goals that you have. So in looking from where you are and being that competitive person, knowing that you want to continually to improve, if you had a time machine and had to kind of start all over, like what would you do differently?
I would tell myself exactly what you just said because I didn't realize that. And
Mhm.
I joke and I'll say a lot of times that the plate of success is a lot more like a plate of spaghetti than what we think of as a straight linear path.
That's right.
It was only by me starting to like realize and see and hear people's stories and hear somebody that I consider successful went bankrupt. And so
Mhm.
you didn't just wake up and become successful. So I think if I got in that time machine, there's no question I would tell myself that, hey, it's the process. It's really, this is something like I've learned over the time. I didn't have I didn't have that, kind of appreciation. And still sometimes I struggle with that and wanting to be where you want to be rather than, where you're at now. But I think that reading and hearing the successful people, their stories, hearing that it wasn't a
Mhm.
straight path, that helps out a lot because it gives you, I think one of the misconceptions is that people, they say the overnight success takes 10 years. And a lot of that is because it's not a straight path. And, a lot of
Mhm.
times it's a lot of, potholes and dead ends and cliffs and all types of stuff that happens. So I think no question, I would whisper and tell myself that, hey, just find what you want to do and understand it's not going to be straight. It's not going to be, all sunshine and rainbows, but you can get there. Just continue on and persevere.
Wow. Gresh, you just said a whole lot right there. The overnight success is 10 years, right? Literally. So it is in a generation or in a world where like we are so, we want things quick, fast, and in a hurry. Everything is fast speed, fast everything, fast internet, everything is fast. But then it's the idea of when you are trying to grow, you're trying to build something and build something great, a legacy, and do things that are impactful. That takes time. And it's so funny that we want to see that overnight success. And we could get caught up in what we see on social media because people put out their successes, but they don't put out the behind scenes. And so we can see that journey. So I love that what you said, and I'm going to use that just to let you know. that the
That works.
overnight test is 10 years. I love that. So, you talked about there's a thing that we say great leaders are great readers. So what are some of the things that you are reading for yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the, and I actually was just thinking about it. I want to go back and revisit it. So use the word, you said focus. I seem so focused, but I wouldn't consider myself very, very focused because I have a lot of things that I'm always interested in. But I will say this book called The One Thing by Gary Keller has been one of my favorite books because it reminds me to focus in a unique way. I think so many times when people that are really, I think the more creative people are probably people that always want to try different things. The more I always say too, when you become entrepreneurial, you start to see like opportunities. And once you start to see one opportunity, you start to see a lot of opportunities. So it becomes an issue of kind of prioritizing and seeing what you're going to work on and what you aren't. The One Thing was one of my favorite books because the whole thesis of it is asking what's the one thing that by doing it, everything else is easier or unnecessary. And the front of the book actually shows dominoes, and it has basically a really small domino, and each domino gets bigger and bigger over time. And what the idea and the concept is that if you find the most impactful thing that you can focus on, it can create that domino effect where it starts to hit over a larger domino. That larger domino hits over a extra large domino, and then it kinks, it just goes on from there. So I think that's been one of my, absolute favorite books. I always like The Alchemist. That's a phenomenal book and a phenomenal read as well. It talks a lot about that journey and thinking you are where you're supposed to be, and all of a sudden you have to, go right and things like that. So I love that, kind of parable too. But yeah, those are the two biggest things that have been probably, very impactful for me to kind of, think about as far as books.
I love those. And so, we have podcasts are trending, and everybody has a podcast nowadays. Are there any specific outside of yours, of course, and we'll get to that in a minute, any other podcasts that you like to listen to?
Yeah, I love the podcast, How I Built This. And funny enough, I was just answering, this question. So I like How I Built This because it talks about, again, some of the behind the scenes on, what people have done to get to where they are. And loads of words of wisdom and advice and information that you can kind of learn from people's journeys. I'm a big sports guy, so I'm a huge Cowboys fan. So I always have to mention the Blog and the Boys podcast. So I always listen to that. I'm ESPN Daily, all of those have always been kind of huge to me. And then there's another one that I've just, kind of got introduced to called Social Proof, which is another, kind of long form podcast. But it talks about people's journey, digs down really deep into the things that they've done, to be successful. So I think there's loads of gems there as well.
I love that. That's one of my favorites too, Social Proof. So let me ask you this, as if you were to write a book, right? And it'll be about you, about your life, about your journey. What would it be called, and kind of what would be the summary on the back of the book?
Great question. So I'm definitely gonna still lean into it's all about progression, in the sense, and it has to have that Gresh spelling. And then on the back, I think it's so funny you asked this question because I was in a networking group and they asked what course would you teach. And, of course I could do marketing and podcasting and all those things. But I think the biggest thing that I really want to kind of be remembered by, or just have a book and all of those things be my legacy, I guess you can say, is just understanding that your path, your race, as I like to say, your journey, your gifts, all of those things are authentic to you. And as much as I, in that book, would love to tell my story, what I want people to get across is that you don't have to go the way that everybody wants you to go. You can run your own race. You'll win because you're running your own race. And if you stay true to that, I think it's so important to kind of lean more into yourself. So as much as it is to, pay attention and listen to the advice of mentors and things like that, don't forget about yourself. So many times we're looking externally for the answer. when we really need to do that deep work inside to realize like who we are, where we want to be, and maybe what is even blocking us, from that, what story we should be saying. So I think hopefully that's not too far. I don't know how many characters I have on the back of the book, but hopefully that's enough to where it'll get a couple sales.
All right. When's that book coming out?
You're putting me on the spot. That's coaching there. Soon.
I love it. All right, quick. Top 3 personal growth tips.
Top 3 personal growth tips are definitely going to be listen to podcasts, blogs, video content, just to make sure that you're always consuming some type of positive impact in an environment that's going to set you there. Number 2, make sure that you are actually spending time with people. So that could be like through a coach, that could be a mastermind, it could be a group. Just get a bunch of people that are around that maybe aren't going on the same journey, but have similar journeys that you want to, take care of. Number 3, I think it's something that high achievers don't do as much as they should, and I have to work on myself, is giving yourself grace. Realize that you might be farther along than you sometimes give yourself credit for. So part of that, and if I could add in a 3B, I'm going to say, make sure you write down your wins, because that's one of the things that I thought was really phenomenal. I need to do a better job of that, because we don't give ourselves credit. So sometimes by writing it down and looking at it years later, you'll say that, hey, I did do a lot more than I thought I did.
Wow, I love those. I love those. Hope you guys wrote all of those down, even the 3B, because those were gold. And you need to make sure that you put that and just kind of reflect on that, because he's giving you some great things to help you to develop. So what's one thing that most people don't know about you?
I'll tell you, well, I don't know how many people know, but I talked about that fear part. One of the things that I did, I was super afraid of heights. So I have this picture that I still show to this day, and I have it up everywhere of me going skydiving. That was one of the things that I flexed that fear muscle. So I did that. At Howard, you have to take a swimming class. So I did a lot of those things to really, help out with the swimming. But I think that's probably one of the big things. And if I could give you one more, I am a junior, but I should be a third. So that's also a unique fact. Fun fact.
Okay, awesome. And welcome to the skydiving club. Yes.
There we go. I respect.
The best thing ever, I got to say. Awesome. Amazing. So, let people know, how can we get a hold of you? Where can we hear about you? Where can we find you?
Yeah, so I have links and kind of information at my site, iamgresh.com. That's IAMGRESH.com. There's links to the podcast, the digital marketing, my blog, and things like that. You can also check out blue16media.com. That's blue16media.com.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. So you guys make sure that you go to the links, check them out, check the podcast, the blog. Phenomenal. This has been an awesome conversation. It was great to have you. And I'm going to leave you at, I asked the guests, there's one question I ask all the guests that come on to kind of just close us out. And that question is, what does adulting in my purpose mean to you?
I love that question. And I think for me, I'm going to go back to what I said about, if you run your own race, you can't lose. So I think as you become an adult and you start to realize that you have a lot of freedom and opportunity to kind of make those decisions, change and create your own path and your own structure and do it from your purpose. I think that's really what it means, is that you have the freedom to choose, create your own path, go down somebody else's path. But that's, to me, what adulting my purpose is running your own race and staying true to that.
I love that. Run your own race and stay true to that. Guys, this has been phenomenal. So Gresh, thank you so much for your time. I mean, all of the wisdom that you have shared. Thank you for being open and sharing your journey. I know that has been an inspiration to me, and it's been an inspiration to those that are out there listening and tuning in. So we thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nick.
Absolutely. So, guys, this is what we do at Adulting in My Purpose. We are creating a movement to help young leaders and millennials out there discover who they are, clarify their vision, and develop a plan to take their next steps in life. So, we'll be back next week with another amazing millennials that are out there making moves to hear their journey and hear their inspirational story. So, you don't want to miss it. So, come back next week. We'll be here again. But until then, you know what to do. You stay safe and you be blessed. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.